had a near-death experience around age 3. To this day, it's why I believe in God. Everything that happened was similar to what adults experienced, but it happened at a time before I was socialized to know what happens after death. Thus, the predisposition theory is out the window. Long story short, had the flu, almost died. I woke up covered in my own vomit. Presumably, I died from asphyxiation. 3 angels came down. Their presence felt like family. Like I was with siblings or cousins or parents. They told me not to be afraid and to go with them. I was really scared at first and tried to hide under my covers, but they told me God sent them to take me somewhere fun and loving and great. I eventually went with them. We flew out of my window towards a great light, almost like a portal of sorts in the sky. As it got closer and closer, I looked back towards my house, which was at this point a speck on the ground. I got really scared and was holding the hand of one angel, but went to hug him. He stopped along with the others and asked me, without really saying words, if something was wrong. All I thought was that I didn't want to leave my mom behind. I had lost my dad at a young age and didn't want to leave my mom like he did when he died. The angel said that it was okay to be scared, and that I had a choice. If I went with them, I would be happy, loved, and comfortable with God. I looked through the portal. It was like light, pure light. Colors I'd never seen. Colors similar to blues and greens, and reds and purples. And of course, shades of gold and yellow. It looked fun. It felt warm and safe. I wanted to go, so we went a little closer. But the worst heartbreak I ever felt came over me, and all I could think about was how much I loved my mom, and I couldn't leave her alone, and I asked if God would let me stay with her, so she wouldn't be sad like when my dad died. I remember the angel smiling at me, and saying God would be happy to let me go back. I felt sad about leaving the light, but I felt an overwhelming need to go back to my mom. We quickly began floating towards my home again, towards my window. I got a glimpse of my body and everything got really slow. An overwhelming white light took over my vision, and like a clash of lightning or crash of a percussive cymbal, I woke up and shot up in my bed. I looked around for angels, but saw none. I started calling out for my mom, who ran into my room and saw I was covered in vomit. She cleaned me up, told me not to worry, and held me. I was crying hysterically, but not because of the mess, but because I was so relieved to have been with her again. God is real. Yes, I am Christian, but I don't claim to have all the answers. Whether God is the Abrahamic God that dominates the worldview today, or simply a guiding force or power in the universe that guides all life, there is something on the other side of nonce. Be a good person. Live as selflessly as possible. Pray. Meditate. Do good works. And something beautiful awaits us. Be me, 22 years old, like 4:30 a.m. Stop at McDonald's to get some coffee. Pull around drive-thru and see some old-ass car sitting at the window. Pull up behind him and wait. Several minutes pass, so I honk my horn twice to see what the fuck. Weird old guy leans out window and gives me dirty look. Then pulls out. Zero fucks given face.jpg. Pull up to order my shit and notice chick at the register looks distressed. What's wrong.jpg? She tells me that the creepy ass old dude was hitting on her for almost an hour and wouldn't leave. He's like 60 by the way, and she's probably like in high 20s. Notice in rearview mirror that he's pulled and is waiting for me to leave. She notices him as well and looks worried. I order my coffee, and when she gives me my change, I offer to just sit here to keep him from being able to get to the window. She thanks me and accepts. On a side note, there were no other cars around, so I wasn't stopping business or anything. She gives me my coffee out the pay here window, and I just sit there for about 15 to 20 minutes. Dude gets pissed after a while and starts just laying on his horn. Zero fucks given face.jpg again. He rages and pulls around me and up to the side of my car and gets out. He starts walking around my car. I notice that he got out a pocket knife. I reach over and grab my burly-ass work knife. I work as a plumber. I use it to break loose the seal around toilets or shower plates. Literally do a real-life Crocodile Dundee moment and get out of my car and show him my large poo-encrusted knife. He immediately rethinks his options and gets back in his car and leaves. Clerk calls police, but I leave before they get there. I didn't want to fill out a written report or any of that other bullshit. Not really a scary story, more of a crazy fucks come out at night story. Kinda long story, but I used to do quite a bit of urban exploration a few years back. And I was kind of surprised to hear the other side of a story I've been telling for the longest time. It's really changed the way I tell the story. Basically, I was worried as shit whenever I went into places, because I know almost every abandoned apartment building, factory, or asylum around here has been worked on due to asbestos and other crap. The companies just find it cheaper to leave the lot, and nobody wants to pay the absurd cleanup costs. Anyway, when I went to these places, I have my great kit of safety gear on and everything. Full face respirator, hood, thick clothing, rubber gloves, etc. I'm not one of those little nimble urban ninjas who parkour their way through these places and leave everything untouched. No, I just kind of trundle my way through because almost nobody's around. I've cut locks, unboarded windows, and even taken out a brick wall just to fully explore some places. I was a one-man expedition force. At the time, my mental health issues were pretty widely unchecked, so I was convinced that exploring dangerous places alone was actually the best thing to do. I did worry about running into insane hobos and such, but I felt like I could talk my way out of anything if it came down to it. It's pretty hard to understand someone with a mask over their mouth, unless you've worked with them for some time. So I had hooked up a little microphone and put a speaker on my pack that I carried around. And that's the preamble. Story's next. There's an old asylum out on the highway towards what was a construction site for the longest time. Now, the construction site is a business park and the asylum was finally trashed. But it was probably one of the most popular places for urban explorers years ago. When I went there, the first thing I noticed was the wall of signatures in the lobby of all the people who went through and the dates they stayed. Graffiti was everywhere. Anything of value was trashed or stolen, and almost every room spray painted in with silly warnings of, "Keep the fuck out." Just boring ancient hobo dens. The basement was a maze of storage rooms with nothing of value left. But the place was big enough that it took me a few hours to get a good layout. Plenty of scribbled messages on the walls, some probably written by the genuinely crazy homeless people, but most of them were probably written by the other 100 people who explored this place before. It was pretty boring, and disappointing too. So I did what enough people had done before, and started to carve spooky messages into the plaster walls. Real childish shit, like, "Where am I?" or "I can't get out." But it was about the same quality of the rest of the graffiti. As I was packing up, just about to leave, I started to hear footsteps from one of the upper floors. Probably more would-be explorers about to be disappointed. So, I figured I'd go meet up with them and maybe swap stories. Best luck I ever had. I hear them coming down the staircase just as I was heading towards it. I called them a good, "Hello!" but I winced when the speaker I was using came out at shout-like volume. They stopped coming down the stairs by the sound of it, and I could hear them whispering. No reply, but all I see is a head lean around the corner of the stairs, look right at me, and scream. I was fucking scared at the time, and I didn't know what to say, so I shouted the first thing that came to mind. It didn't hit me until later, but the last thing you would want to hear out of an old radio speaker, carried by a faceless 6'8" pile of jackets and gear is, "I'm a human! I'm a human! Don't run away!" For the longest time, I was telling that story like I met up with some ghost, but last summer, I met a guy who didn't have any stories of his own, but shared one of a friend. His friend found a monster in the asylum basement that said it was human and chased him out. I told him my story, and we had a great laugh out of it. Weird as fuck. 14. At summer camp. We're at a private campground by a lake. Dusk. Boat pulls up by our dock. was too far away, but a guy got out of the boat, and even from the distance I was, 300 to 400 feet, he looked strange. One of the counselors walks up to him, doesn't even get halfway to the end of the dock before turning around and running. Talks to other counselors. We all get told to get into our vans immediately and go. Don't even bother getting your stuff. We pile in and take off. Stop off at the town store. Cops show up. Cops escort us back to campground. Wildlife rangers are there. They're talking with the counselors. Get told we're to rearrange all our tents in a circle around the fire. 2 ranger trucks are camped by our tents, with armed rangers patrolling. The counselors also patrol during the night. Morning, we eat, pack up, and leave. Counselors never explained what happened. Some of the kids said some of their clothes were missing, but none of their valuables. Weird as shit. Story came from an Australian friend who lived in Brunei around when she was in 16 or 17. Be only child. One night, friend hears a woman laughing. It's coming from a forest behind the house. Laughing sounds pretty far, but whoever's laughing keeps on going. Nopes the fuck out and goes to parents' bedroom. Huddles up with mom and dad. Mom hears it too. Dad's asleep. Laughing sound starts sounding louder and closer. Mom starts citing prayers. Doesn't do anything. Suddenly, laughter comes from inside the house. It's coming from friend's bathroom. Then the sound of the woman laughing stops. They can't sleep, but eventually does. Dad sleeps through the whole thing. Next morning, friend wakes up, goes to her bathroom, finds strands of long black hair on the drain pipes. Mom has short hair. Friend has short hair. She screamed. So what my friend and her mom encountered was a kuntilanak, different names for a female ghost in Indo, Malay, and Brunei folklore. Common in the folklore of these 3 countries is that when the sound of her laughing is far away, that means she, the ghost, is nearby. And if the laughing sounds near, that means she's far away. Be me, a 9-year-old kid. Live in a remote mountainous village in a war-torn country during the 90s. People are struggling, food is scarce, and the war has finally reached the outskirts of the village, causing multiple deaths. Everyone is scared shitless, and men of the village have few bullets and guns left, and no electricity. One night in late winter, a boy was walking towards his home normally from his grandparents' house, like he always did. Suddenly, the whole town hears a loud scream, and many, including me, rush to see what's happening. We found the kid has pissed himself and his face is covered with dirt, with his eyes wide open and in shock state. After they pour water on his face and relentlessly screaming at him to say what happened, he starts talking while crying loudly and gasping. Heads. Man. Big. Bags. With chains. He looked at me and I ran away screaming. Men ridiculed him and said he probably saw someone with bags going towards his home, and he imagined things in the dark. Days later, another kid ran towards his home, screaming the same thing. The next night, another kid went missing. Men decided to start a night patrol. All kids were told not to leave their homes after the sun goes down. They searched everywhere in the mountain until the dawn. Next morning, the army has arrived to town and all men had to hide in the mountain, not to be imprisoned. For nights, the village was terrorized not by invading army, but a strange creature that kept on knocking on doors at night and peeking through windows in the dark. The situation got so bad, even the army got wind of it and started searching for this thing/man. 2 days later, the army retreated back to the outskirts of the village, and the men went down from the mountain. Along with them, the missing boy. He had shallow cuts all over his body. He told them that a monster dressed in black plastic bags and chains and bones took him and beaten him and left him in the mountain. The area of the mountain was known to the village. For years, the village people used a cave in the top of the mountain for a dreadful reason. The cave was used to bury children and miscarried births. Men decided to set up an ambush for this thing. All got armed with what little they had. and some even got axes and large knives. They waited through the entire night until it seemed they lost all hope they would find him. It was about dawn when what appears to be a man, dressed with nothing but black garbage bags and chains around his body, with a large bag of bones sticking out of it, came from afar. They waited from a distance to see and know more on what he does next. The man enters the cave and then comes out with a bucket full of dirt and empties it outside, revealing to be what remains of a child's dead body. He then proceeds to skin the limbs and take the bones inside his bag. Shockfaces.jpg and all men. Attack mode engaged. Man is caught, and after heavy beatings, they discovered he's been doing this for a while, digging up children bodies. Wacko thought he's some sort of wizard and wanted children bones to summon devils to service him. The child was kidnapped for his blood. Needless to say, this was a war zone, and men didn't want someone scaring the shit out of their families more than they already are. So they killed the guy, buried his ass in the mountain, and called it a day. Work nights at the mall as a custodian. There was this really friendly old woman working, become fast friends. Night shift at our mall was weird as fuck. Knocking, music, and speaker turning on and off. She jokes around that we protect the mall. After 2 years of seemingly harmless weird shit, hear her crying in the janitor's room. Ask her if she's alright. He's dead. He's fucking dead. Who's fucking dead? All of a sudden, she's behind me, asking what I'm talking about. God help me, I will never have a night where I don't think about it. Hiking alone in the Smokies, carrying a fail with me for LARPing purposes. Hike to a campsite I had pre-planned to stay at. Show up right before the sun went down. Someone is already there. Vintage tent and gear set up. Walk up, and a skinny guy with hippie hair and a beard gets out of the tent. His entire getup looks like he was straight out of the mid-80s. Talk as I set up my tent. Apparently he's some hippie soul-searching in the mountains. Completely cool with my gun. I build a fire and we sit down. Talk around the fire until midnight. Starts hearing this moaning sound. Quiet at first, but started to get louder. Ask hippie if he hears it. Yeah, but don't worry. As long as I'm still here, he can't hurt us. Lol, okay. Go to sleep with hippie still sitting by the fire. Hear the moans get louder, and I chamber around. Don't get a wink of sleep as I hear the moans come closer, and then back off. Moaning stops when I start to hear birds. Open up my tent in the morning to see hippie's gear completely gone. Figured I could have fallen asleep without realizing it. Ground where hippie's stuff was undisturbed. No evidence he had even existed at the camp. Decide to go home. Had a few weird experiences in my life. I personally attribute them to nightmares and paranoia, but a green text is a green text. Be me, about 7 years old. Never have any problems in my life or nightmares. Suddenly, start sleeping very poorly at night. I keep hearing ringing in my ears during the night, and it always starts during 3:23 a.m., like clockwork. For about a month, I keep waking up at 3:23 dead stop, always with a horrible migraine and ringing. Things get worse. Wake up once, completely paralyzed. Fucking scared shitless, want to scream. Can't. The ringing is so loud that my eyes start watering, and I'm seeing red. Suddenly, see my door slowly opening. Insanely bright light fills the room. Ringing very intense. Feel myself being lifted up. Hear voices as if they're playing in reverse, extremely sped up. Clicking. Feel burning sensations around my body. Ringing stops, but is replaced by a singular painful screech in my head. Open mouth to scream, but again, I can't. Suddenly wake up standing on the other side of my room, completely drenched in sweat. Start screaming my lungs out. Parents rush in. Attributes it to childhood nightmares. It repeats again in a week, same scenario. Ringing that grows in intensity, a lot of pain, seeing red, can't move, door opens, and there's a bright light with voices that talk extremely fast and click. Parents now worried. Talk about taking me to a therapist. Dad especially worried when I tell him about it, and he looks extremely upset, starts tearing up. Neither me or Mom understands. He just says he's upset that I have to go through this. Things stop after the last one. Never hear ringing again. Talk with grandfather about it. Person I highly look up to. He's basically the ideal of what it means to be a man. Never lies, always straightforward, never drinks, extremely fit, spiritualistic, and well-read. He tells me not to worry about it, and that it happened to my dad, to him, to his dad, and his grandfather. Tells me that the feeling passes after a few times. Ask him what it is. He just tells me that there are people on this planet that go through this, that during the night, and at a specific age, nightmares come. That it's a bloodline thing, and it's nothing we can do about it. That the nightmares only look scary, but they don't want to harm us, and it's better to not resist. Tells me things will stop for me and to not worry about it. That the nightmares won't come back, and won't talk with me again. Tells me it won't happen to my son and his son, and that when it does, I should just calm them down. I might hear things and feel restless or scared, but that I should not go to his room until he yells out, because it might make things worse. What? Talk with grandfather about this later in life, and he just tells me the same thing. Not to worry, it happens, nothing bad about it. But don't do anything when it happens, and to let it take its course. In a way, I kinda got angry at my dad since he never even talked about it, and just told me to forget it. Also got angry at my grandfather, since he was always vague. I lost some respect for both of them, because I felt that rather than taking me to a therapist about nightmares, they just blew a huge nothing burger about it, and made me paranoid as a kid with these vague stories. They both have always been quite tinfoil tier in general, but didn't share much with me until I got older. At that time, and even now, I see them as someone weird and too absorbed in fantasy. They told me many stories about weird things they saw in the Soviet army. Many more times, they simply would go, "The things I wish I could tell you, but I just can't." Especially my grandfather, as he had a very high standing in it. My father was the last one of our family to serve in the army. I wanted to do the same, but they were both very adamant in telling me not to do it. That it's a waste of time, and that if I was serious about it, I wouldn't like the things there. My grandfather never got too absorbed into it, and as I said, took a spiritual approach. As for my father, he simply became an alcoholic. The only reason he gave me for drinking his life away was that he just wants to forget about things, and that I should be happy that I don't have to know about them. Would also go full tinfoil, read about various conspiracy and paranormal stories, break into crying, talking with himself, and binge drinking. This is some blog posting now, but I guess it's nice to share this aspect with someone. And I am bitter about all of this, as they were the two people that ruined my childhood. To end, I had nightmares. Rather than helping, I heard spooky stories. Dad was an alcoholic that avoided life and blamed quote-unquote life in the army. Grandfather was just weird and spent too much of his entire life in an army that caused too many atrocities. Probably affected him. Wearing my bright red jacket at a popular campground/hiking trail. Hike on the main trail until I get to one of the lesser used side trails. Go down it. About 2 miles, a clearing opens up. See a collapsed tent. Decide to see if everything's okay. Clothes strewn everywhere. Campfire burned out and cold. Must have been at least a few days. Check out the tent. There's a plastic bag with one of those old flip phones in it. Take it out to see if I can find someone who knows the camper. Press the power button. Full charge. No contacts or calls. Suddenly, incoming call. Blocked number. Decline the call. Text message. Open it. Nice red jacket. Oh fuck. Put the phone in my pocket and run back to the trail. Call the warden. He takes the phone but says no one has been reported missing and unfound all year.